What's up guys, and welcome back to the ultimate guide to the One Piece card game. I took my sweet time to do this video because I had a lot of stuff going on that needed my undivided attention, but now it's time to talk about deck building. And we are going to make a deck during this video, and we're gonna start off slow. We're gonna do an easy build that you can do and something that will be able to be upgraded in the future. So this is gonna be a followed series for that specific deck that we're gonna make. But before we get into deck building, you need to know what constitutes a valid deck in the One Piece card game. Well, the very first rule that you need to follow is that your deck needs to be 50 cards, no more, no less. And that's not including the leader. Your leader is a totally separate card from your deck. In fact, you can play the same deck with multiple different leaders, if you do so choose, but I would advise against it. And that's for a very specific point that we're gonna get to in a second. But the second hard rule that you're gonna need to follow in order to build your deck is that any cards in your deck should be the same color as your leader. So if you take a green leader, you need to have only green cards in your deck. If you take a yellow leader, you need to have only yellow cards in your deck. That's where some variety comes in with dual color leader, because if you have a red-green leader, you may have red and green cards in your deck. Doesn't matter the amount, you are allowed to have red and green in your deck because your leader is red and green. Also remember to play, you need a 10 card done deck, which is also not part of your main deck, and you can pretty much pick any done that you like and that fits your style. But that's it for the rules of deck building and restriction. And before I go on to the general tips for building a deck, consider subscribing to the channel and liking this video. I'm trying my best to reach 1,000 subscribers, so if you are interested in the One Piece card game, make sure to like this video and subscribe to the channel. You might think it's not much, but it makes a tremendous difference. Like, seriously, I cannot stress how helpful it is to the channel if you subscribe and like the video. Now, to start off, here's my 3 tips to get an efficient deck. The first, start with the leaders. Choose a leader that have skills that interest you, or a leader that you think is cool. Because if you don't play what you like, then there's no point in playing. I can offer a recommendation on leaders because some are more efficient than others, some I think that are cooler than others. Sometimes those two overlaps. I think a leader is cool and it ends up super meta. But the second tip that you can follow that will give you an easier time building a deck is, once you've chosen a leader, stay in the type of the leaders. And what I mean by that is, some leaders are, say, Baroque work, some are leaders Straw Hat Pirates, some are Red Hair Pirates. The important thing to remember is that once you've chosen your leader, try to build around that leader and around that theme. So if you build a Straw Hat Crew deck, try to have cards that have a big benefit from having a Straw Hat Crew leader. And my third tip for you to build easily any deck that you want is start with the 5x10. And if you don't know what the 5x10 is, don't worry, we're gonna take a look at this right now. 5x10 rule is a sort of framework that you can follow in order to easily build any deck that you want. You start from the 5x10 and then you refine it to a better, more balanced deck. And the idea really is going to be super simple. You're going to start with 5 categories of cards and you're going to put 10 cards in those categories. So the first one is going to be event and stage. This is the first category and you're going to put 10 cards in that. The second is going to be your defense. That means the 2k counters and the blockers alike. You're going to take 10 cards and you're going to put them in that categories. Next is going to be the early game. That's your utility cards that you're going to need to start the game with, that going to give you an advantage early game. You're going to put 10 cards and you're going to put them in that categories. Next, you're going to have your mid-game bruisers. So that's the bodies that you're going to have on the board that's going to allow you to do some early damage and have a bit more effect and a bit more power on the board in order to not fall behind your opponent. You're going to put 10 of those cards and you're going to put them in that categories. And the last one is going to be the end game bosses. You're going to have some big win condition, a card that when you think of that card and you think, I'm playing that card will make you win the game, or at the very least is going to turn the tide of the battle dramatically in your favor. Those are end game bosses. You're going to take 10 cards like that and you're going to put them in that category, and that's going to be the 5x10 framework. That's your base that you're going to work with. So that's what we're going to do today. We're going to start with a leader and we're going to work our way through that 5x10 framework, and we're going to refine that deck over time in order to balance it a bit more and so that it might be more efficient. So today I'm going to show you how to use that framework and how to build around this, and I've chosen a leader already. That's going to be the blue Doflamingo from OPO1. And the reason I chose this leader is not only is it a fairly easy leader to understand, but also it's a fairly known leader. It was here since the beginning of the game, so you're not gonna have any trouble getting your hands on that leader. And more specifically, there's a starter deck that's coming out very soon with that very leader as the star of the deck. So in terms of availability and effect, this leader has a good start for us as a beginner player, and also we know from the Japanese meta that this leader is starting to get some traction over there because of the OPO8 meta that is slowly stabilizing itself. So we know that leader has some good tools in order for us to take this build from beginner to advanced over time, and that's what we plan to do, so that's great for us. But first, let's talk about the leader's effect. So as you can see on the screen, the Doflamingo leader, he's a blue solid color leader, so you're gonna have a 5 life, and his effect is a Dawn X2, so you need to attach 2 Dawn to your leader, and when he attacks you need to tap another Dawn. So you need to get in mind that his effect is going to cost you 3 Dawn, 2 of which you're going to have to give to him. So he's going to attack most of the time at 7k, which is actually something already very good, because 7k is kind of a ceiling when you attack. Because your opponent will have to spend not only a 2k counter, but also another counter on top of that in order to beat your attack and not take any damage. So that's perfect from an attacking standpoint, but his effect is also very interesting because you can reveal the top cards of your deck, and if that card is a 7 Warlords of the Sea character cards, that's very important. This needs to be a character card with a cost of 4 or less. You may play that card rested. So really the idea with that Doflamingo is that when you are attacking your opponents, you're gonna be able to play cards rested on your boards and get a bit more inertia going. So you're going to be able to play some character for free, and as we know, there are cards with on-play effect that are very interesting, and the only thing that we need to keep in mind is that those cards need to be 4 cost or less of the 7 Warlords of the Sea. That's all we need to care about. So now we're going to take a look at all the blue cards that we have, and remember we're starting off with the 5x10 framework. So we're going to start with the events and stages, really there's a Whitebeard Pirate, that's not good for us. Amazon Lily is also not good for us. Impel Down, not good, is blue, and Lockdown is not going to be good either. So stage, we're not going to use that. Now if we look at the blue event, we have some interesting thing and some that we know are very strong, but the question is going to be, will that fit in a 7 Warlords of the Sea? But we don't really need to always be in that type. For instance, Gum Gum Red Rock is an absolute must-have. You can bottom deck any character that you want. So I would argue that you don't have for event to strictly be in your type. So me personally, I'm feeling Red Rock, of course. That's a very good card. I'm tempted to get a bit more draw power as well, so I'm maybe gonna do with Sanji's Pilaf ×2 and I know like 3000 word is also very strong, so I'm gonna put 4 of those, and that's gonna be my 10 events that I'm gonna start with. So that's already 1 categories of the framework that I've already filled. I'm gonna leave it at that for now, and now I need to look at my 2k counters. So I'm gonna put C2000, and we're gonna have all cards here that have 2k counters. And one of the 7 warlords of the sea that exists is Dracula Mihawk, is a 2k counter, but is also a 4 cost 5k power. And remember, we need a 7 warlords of the sea with a cost of 4, so that's already a good card. And also you can draw 2 trash 2 from your hand, so you have card cycling, which is very good for what we're trying to achieve. So that's a card that we might consider. And let's see what we have as 7 warlords. We have a Crocodile, which has an on-play effect for 1, and that's something that we also want to use, and return up to 1 2 cost or lower character to the owner's hand. So you can potentially get back something from the board, one of the utilities of your opponents. We have the OPO7 Law, that is also great. It's an activate main, and you can return this character to its owner's hand. If your opponent has 6 or more cards in their hands, they place 1 card from their hands at the bottom of the deck. So if your opponent is getting a ton of cards in hand, you can totally use this. But me, I'm gonna go with 4 Dracula Mihawk. And remember, we're also gonna look, I'm gonna go 2 Crocs. So that's 6 cards, and I'm gonna go for blockers next. I want blockers, and I want blockers with the 7 warlords of the sea type. So we have that Boa Hancock, which has a trigger, so that's even more cool. We have this Trafalgar Law also, and that Croc with 5, but we cannot play this for free with our leader, so we're not gonna put him in that categories just yet. Oh, that's gonna be cool. We can totally do the Bartholomew Kuma, so we can put 4 Kumas, which has blockers. So we're now at defensive option, we have 10, so that's on par with what we do. And we can also like play with the Pacifistas, because on KO you can play a Pacifista card with a cost of 4 or less from your hands. So that's actually something that we can take advantage of. We'll get back to this once we are at the mid game, but right now we are in the utilities, in the utility phase. So we're gonna look at cards which have a cost from 1 to 3. Of course, we're gonna always try to look for the 7 warlords, so that's what we're gonna input as our search term. And the first thing as an utility that you will need is gonna be a searcher. So we need a low-cost card that's gonna have a search capability that we're gonna be able to take advantage from. Now, sadly, in blue, you don't really have tutor cards like searcher, proper searcher. We have a bit with the Bartholomew Kuma, but what we have is deck stacking, so we know which card is going to be at the top. And since we plan on playing cards for free with the Doflamingo leader, that might be something that we can take advantage of. So we can totally put this Don Quixote Doflamingo, and even if it is at the top of the deck and we play it for free, we get to stack the rest of the deck. So we know that we're gonna hit something with all leaders when we play it. So we can already put 4 of those. And another low-cost card that I'm very interested in is this Doflamingo as well, because you have the same effect as your leader with this Doflamingo, which is very interesting, but you need to pay 2 for this. So you need to be aware of the costs. And that might be something that's a bit tricky to some people, because when you do not really have the habit of planning for cards, you might spend it all and not really plan for it. But we have another Bartholomew Kuma here that kind of does the same thing. It's deck stacking and it has a trigger. So you can totally play this for free and again stack the top of your deck, which is kind of what you want. And now I need 2 cards to complete that section. And I'm gonna go with some bit overlapping because we have the blocker Doflamingo, which costs 3. So you can play this with your leader and the other cards that we have. I can put 2 of those, and that's gonna go with my defensive option, with the 2Ks and the blockers that I already have, but also with the utility that I need. So with that early game taken care of, I can now look at the mid game, and that's going to be the cards cost 4 to 6, give or take. And remember, those are going to be your bruisers, they're going to be your strength to fight. But since we've put Bartholomew Kuma, we can take advantage of the pacifistas. Even if they're not 7 warlords, they are still very interesting to us. And actually we can put more than 4 copies in the deck, but since we only have 4 Kumas, we can totally go and put at least 4 pacifistas to go along with those Kumas, because once that blocker is KO'd, you can play another blocker for free, so you have even more defense. So that's going to be a very defensive deck, I feel, but we're going to see how this goes. And also, since we're going to update this deck over time, this might change and this might be completely different by the time that we're done refining. So now we need bruisers, so we're gonna look at the 5k power mark at the very least, and Jinbei is actually an interesting one because we can play this with all leaders effect, and it has an on-play that you can play 1 cost 4 or lower 7 Wonders of the Sea other than Jinbei from your hands. So that's a very cool card that allows you to play more stuff from your hands, albeit 4 cost or lower. So we need to take that into account, but already with Jinbei we can play the Bartholomew Kuma, we can play all blockers, we can play all searcher, or rather deck stacker, I should say. We can play the Crocs, we can play Mihawk, we can play a ton of stuff. Now I'm gonna look at some cards that have a bit more power, and by the magic of time skip, this is now nighttime and we're back with this build. I had to make a break during filming, so we are looking for bosses to add to our deck. We are at 39 cards. We are now gonna be looking at 5 and 6 cards because we have mid-range bodies but not on the higher side of the spectrum. So we're gonna take a look at whatever we can have that's gonna help us really get under the skin of our opponents. We have a very good Dracula Mihawk, which is an 8k power for 6. That's still a very good and a very solid option. If you're not playing against any Monkey D. Luffy, we could totally rock a Boa Hancock. I'm just gonna put 2 of those because it's a very cool way of blocking your opponent's bolts. And with that, we now have 41 cards in our deck, so we're only missing the last 10 cards of this deck, which are going to be the bosses. So for bosses, you want cards that are above 6 cards, so 7, 8, 9, and 10. And you want those cards to have a big effect that when you play them, they turn the tide of the game and they make you win. So when looking at the current list that we have here, there's Crocodile here that has a banish, and blue events in your hands cost 1 less to pay. So you can potentially throw out a red rock for cheaper than what you currently have, and this has banish, so when you're like putting pressure on your opponent, this is a great tool because if he lets the attack of Crocodile pass, he's not gonna get the life in his hands. We also have the Mihawk. On play, you can place up to 1 character with a cost of 7 or less at the bottom of the opponent's deck. That is a very great finisher card. It targets a 7 or less, so that's already a lot of option. We have also a very simple 8 cost Dracula Mihawk. On play, draw cards. We have the 7 cost Doflamingo from the starter deck. On play, return up to 1 character with a cost of 7 or less to the owner's hand. But really, when you look at this Doflamingo, this targets the same thing as the Mihawk with a cost of 9, but Mihawk bottom decks, Doflamingo get it in their hands, so they can throw it out the next turn, which might be detrimental to their energy loop. But for this deck, I really think that our biggest boss, the biggest possible boss that we're gonna have for this deck, I think is gonna be the Mihawk. If we stick to the 7 Walls of the Sea, the Mihawk is gonna be a fantastic boss for this deck. So I'm gonna put 4 of those. So that's 6 slots left, and I'm not gonna put the Miog at 8 because I want to target something more with 7, because if I play a 7 cost, I'm gonna have 3 Dons left active, and then I can use my Doflamingo effect. So the sweet spot is gonna be the 7 Don cards, so either the Crocodile or the Doflamingos. I'm more keen on playing 4 of the Crocodile and maybe 2 of the Doflamingo. And the reason is simple. Crocodile will put more pressure on my opponents than Doflamingo will. And also this has a counter plus 1000, so that's still very cool. So right now this is a very easy build that you can do. This is just a 5x10 framework that was applied to build a deck, but this will need refining over time. And before we can refine this, I need to talk about concept and theories in deck building. So that's gonna be the next video in this series. So if you do not want to miss it out, make sure to subscribe to the channel and hit the like button, and also share this deck build with your friends, either friends that are more knowledgeable than you or friends that are looking into getting into the game. And in the meantime, this Doflamingo leader is gonna come out as a new starter deck in November. So if you want to know more about that, make sure to check out the video that is displayed on screen right now.